in Turkey. And then we're going to have lunch. After lunch, there will be a Mekong Ganga dialogue, networking academic cooperation. So that's the program for today and tomorrow. So I think it's now time for the opening ceremony. Firstly, we're going to do a lighting ceremony which symbolizes the opening of the ceremony. May I invite 4 distinguished guests. Firstly, the President of Ubon Ratchathani University, and secondly, the Dean of Faculty of Liberal Arts, the Dean of the Faculty of Political Science, and our first keynote speaker. Okay, so firstly, may I invite the President of Ubon Ratchathani University, Assistant Professor Dr. Chutinant Puri Pisha, please. And the Dean of the Faculty of Liberal Arts, Associate Professor Dr. Surusak Kamkong. Dean of Faculty of Political Science, Dr. Siripon Jantanasgun Wong. And our keynote speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Amita Mochwani from University of Delhi, India, to do the lighting ceremony, please. So I will ask each distinguished guest to light the candle one by one. Firstly, may I invite the President of Ubon Ratchathani University to light the candle. Next, the Dean of the Faculty of Liberal Arts and the Dean of the Faculty of Political Science. And last but not least, Associate Professor Dr. Amita Mochwani. May I have a big round of applause, please? And that's the symbol of the opening of today's event. Thank you very much, all the distinguished guests. Thank you. And next, in order to hear about the background of today's conference and what's going to happen, may I invite the Dean of Faculty of Liberal Arts, Ubon Ratchathani University, Associate Professor Dr. Surusak Kamkong, to deliver a welcome remark.
Dear Mr. M. Sivaguru, Counselor and Alternate DPR to UNESCAP, Embassy of India, Bangkok. Assistant Professor Dr. Chutinant Puri Pisha, Ubon Ratchathani University President, Deans, distinguished guests, and scholars. On behalf of the organizing committee, I am very pleased and honored to welcome you all to the International Conference on Mekong Ganga Development in Regional Transition and Uncertainty, co-hosted by the Mekong Sub-Region Social Research Center, Faculty of Liberal Arts, Ubon Ratchathani University, and the India Study Center, Faculty of Political Science, Ubon Ratchathani University, together with academic partners, including Embassy of India, Bangkok, India Foundation, Lovely Professional University, Punjab, India, School of Management, Mae Fah Luang University, Thailand, Institute of Asian Studies, Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. The conference has 3 key objectives. One is to seek an emphasis on debate and criticize the ideas, approaches, and methodologies on development and poverty. Second is to present and discuss many different stories and narratives of development and poverty pathway from multi-dimensional themes about the Mekong and Indian development, transition, and uncertainties. Third is to seek the further research cooperation among scholars from both the Mekong riverine countries and India's. The conference is held for 2 days from 1st of March to 2nd of March 2024 at U Place Hotel, Ubon Ratchathani University. The program includes keynote speakers, panelist sessions, technical sessions, and roundtable discussion on the development-related topics and case studies from both India and Mekong regions. Moreover, the conference offers an optional day visit to the Mekong border on the 3rd of March 2024. Once again, on behalf of the organizing committee, we are highly appreciative of your kind participation in the program, and your presence is highly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Dean of the Faculty of Liberal Arts, Ubon Ratchathani University. Next, may I invite on the stage the President of Ubon Ratchathani University, Assistant Professor Dr. Chutinant Puri Pisha, to deliver the opening speech, please.
Dear Dr. M. Sivaguru, Counselor and Alternate DPR to UNESCO, Embassy of India, Bangkok, Deans, distinguished guests, Professor Dr. Amita Motwani, Professor Surachai Vangel, Professor Dr. Valentina Bodrak Lanku, and scholars from India, France, Moldova, Turkey, Myanmar, and Thailand. On behalf of Ubon Ratchathani University, I'm very pleased and honored to welcome you all to the International Conference Mekong Ganga Development in Regional Transition and Uncertainty, co-hosted by the Mekong Sub-Region Social Research Center and the Indian Studies Center. Our vision, Ubon Ratchathani University is a leading university in ASEAN, improving the quality of life for society. Ubon Ratchathani University, or UBU, was established in 1990 as a university of royal charter. It aims to provide educational opportunities for students from all provinces, especially in northeast of Thailand, and those from the lower Mekong sub-region in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Throughout the 33 years since its establishment, Ubon Ratchathani University has played a major role in the development of the Northeast region and has offered degrees in almost all traditional disciplines. UBU has 11 faculties, including agriculture, applied arts and architecture, engineering, science, medicine and public health, nursing, pharmaceutical science, business, laws, liberal arts, and political science. Currently, there are over 17,000 students and about 1,500 faculty members. Our strengths are in the application of knowledge and creative innovation to drive sustainable community development. This conference is also part of our mission to strengthen academic cooperation networks and create learning exchange and coordinate academic service in the area of development in the Mekong and Ganga riverine regions. Again, on behalf of Ubon Ratchathani Province, I would like to welcome all delegates with utmost pleasure and wish tremendous success for this conference. Without further ado, I am now provided to officially declare open this International Conference Mekong Ganga Development in Regional Transition and Uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our President of Ubon Ratchathani University, Assistant Professor Dr. Chutinan Prasit Puri Pisha. And now it's time for the first keynote speech. The first keynote speech will be delivered by Dr. M. Sivaguru, Counselor and Alternate Deputy Permanent Representative to United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia, Embassy of India, Bangkok. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. M. Sivaguru from online, please.
Thank you. Associate Professor Dr. Chutinan Prasit Puri Pisha, President of Ubon Ratchathani University. Associate Professor Dr. Surasak Kamkong, Dean of Faculty of Liberal Arts, Dean of Faculty of Political Science, Associate Professor Dr. Amita Motwani ji, Professor Dr. Churichai Wangyu, Achan Titipol and Achan Pianat. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Sawadika. It is such a pleasure to participate in this important international conference. On behalf of the Embassy, I thank the organizers for this opportunity, especially Achan Titipol, Achan Pianat. The title of the conference, Mekong Ganga Development in Regional Transition and Uncertainty, and also the topics to be discussed in the forthcoming 2 days are also very timely and significant. Since the adoption of the 2030 agenda in 2015, the world has witnessed profound changes. We have devastating pandemic, conflicts, and the irreversible effects of climate change have disproportionately impacted the world's poor and vulnerable, carrying significant global consequences, especially in the Mekong Ganga region. Let me convey some of the recent changes in India, especially the changes related to sustainable development, which I believe would have some positive implications on this region. In 2016, India was the 10th largest economy in the world. Today, we are the 5th largest economy. Very soon, India will become the 3rd largest economy in the world. India is the only major economy showing robust growth in recent times and will continue to do so according to all estimates for the future. The New Delhi Leaders Declaration, adopted by the G20 leaders in September 2023, laid stress on accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. For its own part, India has firmly integrated the SDGs into its national development strategies. Government of India launched multiple focused interventions for each of the SDGs, such as National Rural Livelihood Mission for economic empowerment of around 100 million women, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana to provide LPG connections to more than 100 million households, and construction of over 115 million toilets. Government of India has shifted its focus from women development to women-led development. Recently, India witnessed the historic moment when 1/3 seats are being reserved for women in Lok Sabha, that means our lower house of the parliament, and state and union territory legislatures, ensuring women's participation in decision and policy making. Government of India also operates one of the largest food security programs in the world in the form of targeted public distribution system. Through this system, food grains are being provided to more than 800 billion beneficiaries every month. Significant increase in food grain production has enabled India to build resilient food stocks, which is able to ensure food security for Indians during the last 3 years, despite the pandemic and geopolitical challenges. Midday meals program that provides children healthy meals at school have in turn helped raise the level of nutrition also. As part of the International Year of Millets, there has been a renewed focus on the cultivation, production, and marketing of millets, which are also climate resilient and climate friendly alternatives for food security. Further, India's digital public infrastructure has enabled to bridge geographic gaps and deliver benefits directly to the targeted beneficiaries of social protection schemes. India has also been at the forefront of supporting action-oriented steps at the global level in response to climate change. India has achieved 40% of electric installed capacity through non-fossil fuel sources 9 years ahead of the targets for 2030. As per the recent estimates, India's multidimensional poverty is expected to have reduced from 29% to around 11%, with 248 million people escaping multidimensional poverty in the last 9 years. Before concluding, let me also briefly touch upon India's engagement with Mekong region. India has been engaging with this region and the countries in this region through the Mekong Ganga cooperation since November 2000. This cooperation holds a special place in this region. Yes, it is the oldest sub-regional cooperation rooted in the rich historical, geographical, and cultural ties. It epitomizes India's commitment to build upon the rich heritage and channel the collective aspirations into tangible actions that positively impact the lives of our citizens. With the announcement of security and growth for all doctrine by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2015 and its implementation under the Act East policy, India has re-energized the focus of development cooperation in this area. Capacity building and building upon the traditional linkages has always been India's focus under the Mekong Ganga cooperation. Further, the main focus areas of India are development of connectivity, implementation of quick impact projects, water resource management, education, and culture cooperation. I would like to mention the quick impact projects which were introduced in September 2012 are short gestation, high impact projects with a normal gestation period of up to 1 year, which directly benefit the local communities with results that are immediate and visible. A total of 105 quick impact projects have been undertaken since their inception in 2015-16, out of which 78 projects have been completed and 27 are under various stages of implementation in this region. During the 10th Foreign Ministers meeting of the Mekong Ganga Cooperation in August 2019, it was decided between the ministers that India would undertake a collaborative projects in the areas of sustainable water management, water harvesting, water data collection, climate change, etc. Further, as part of efforts to build capacity, since 2005, India has been offering 50 scholarships per year to students from Mekong Ganga countries to pursue diploma and degree courses. Until 2023, around 390 scholarships were provided to beneficiaries. Moreover, 10 scholarships for courses in museology and conservation technique is offered at National Museum Institute, and 905 scholarships for short duration training programs have been offered under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. India has set up centers for English language training in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. In the information and communication technology sector, a center of excellence in software and training with virtual classrooms and e-learning technologies has been established in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and 10 master trainers have been trained for each of them. In addition to the above, India has always supported connectivity initiatives, especially the concept of East-West Corridor connecting India to the Mekong region. It has been focus of India's cooperation under Mekong Ganga cooperation as well as under Asian framework. India is also steadfast in its dedication to enhancing comprehensive connectivity within the region through projects like India-Myanmar Thailand Trilateral Highway and Kalawan Multimodal Transit Project. India is also committed to eastward extension of the Trilateral Highway to Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. A project development fund titled PDF CLMB Fund with a corpus of around USD 65 million was created by Government of India. The primary objective of this fund is to act as a facilitator for Indian private and public sector investments in these countries and also to improve the infrastructure development in the region. India has also welcomed the initiative of countries of the Mekong sub-region to synergize various developmental initiatives in the region under the Airavati Chao Phraya Mekong Economic Cooperation Strategy umbrella. India has become one of the first developmental partners of ACMEX as we see strong synergy in our activities under the Mekong Ganga Cooperation and the developmental agenda of ACMEX. Once again, I thank the organizers for providing this opportunity and also convey the best wishes from Embassy of India for a successful conference. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Kap and Kap.
Thank you very much, Dr. M. Sivaguru, Counselor and alternate DPR to UNE SCAP from Embassy of India, Bangkok. The next keynote speech will be delivered by Associate Professor Dr. Amita Mochwani from University of Delhi, India. May I now introduce her briefly. Dr. Amita Mochwani is an Associate Professor in the Department of Commerce and a member of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell at Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi, India. Dr. Mochwani has a teaching experience of more than 38 years. She's also a visiting professor at Central University of Applied Sciences, Finland, and has worked as senior consultant with the Committee for Consultation on Situation in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Amita Mochwani.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here amidst you. Thank you to the organizers for a lovely welcome at the airport yesterday, and all the delegates from different countries and different parts of Thailand whom I met at the dinner. So this is my presentation of the research that I have undertaken. As part of my doctoral studies, I made this thesis called the social construction of poverty in India. But over the last 20 years, whatever work I have done, including the field work that I undertook as a member of the government committee to look into demand for a separate state of Telangana, and also an ICSSR funded project on how the agrarian distress is affecting women from marginalized communities. So whatever I found as part of my doctoral research and the field work that I undertook in a village in Haryana state in India, it got solidified, Most of those research findings have been validated by my further field work. So I present to you what I have learned through all these interactions with people in different parts of the country. So to begin with, a little bit about why we are talking about the social construction of poverty. The term poverty is familiar to everyone, and yesterday in the informal interaction at dinner, I was told many scholars in this university are also working on the issue of poverty. In India, you will find there is no dearth of research on poverty. There are many research articles, books. So in any library that I went, there were stacks full of books on poverty. I tried to study as much as I could. However, the gap that I found was that, and for that I'm using this quotation, that there are thousands of books and expert advice about the solutions to the problem of poverty, but the meaning of poverty is very different. You know, when I say the word poverty or the word poor, what I have in mind is very different from what you might have and what someone else might have. So this is what interested me, to see how these ideas are made in our minds, where do we learn what is poverty, and how it changes over time, what role is played by the academic research, academicians who have been writing about how to measure poverty, how to solve poverty. Their ideas over time, I studied over, let's say, the last 50 to 70 years, how the ideas have changed and how it has fed into the policy making. What role do the international development agencies like World Bank and UNDP play in defining poverty? And how does all this knowledge produced by the academics and the policymakers at the national level, the international development agents, and the community workers, the people who are actually dealing with the poor and who are implementing various programs, and the people themselves, the ones whom we classify as poor and the non-poor, how do they understand and how these interact with each other is what I mean by social construction. So this term, I use the social construction. It means looking at poverty as a social object, understand poverty by studying the various discourses of poverty, and also how this discourse interacts with the practice of poverty alleviation in the society. Here, particularly, I'm talking about the Indian society. So the methods I used were that I tried to understand the relationship between the academics' research, how it feeds into the policy, how the policy is then implemented, how it is understood by the development workers at different levels. Because there are people who make policy sitting in the central government, mostly in Delhi, and then there are people, bureaucracy at the state level, which get the funds and they try to implement these projects, plans, etc. There is the middle level bureaucracy at the state level, and then there is the lower bureaucracy at the district level, and then at the village level, because I am mostly concerned with rural poverty, and urban poverty in India is actually an overflow of rural poverty. People don't find enough gainful employment in villages, so they migrate to cities and then they become the urban poor. So how at the village level then these programs are implemented by the village level workers, and how all this academic knowledge, policy, implementation, how it constructs the common sense knowledge about poverty. So that is what I mean by the social construction, and this is how I studied it. You may not be able to see this very clearly. But basically what I started with was this understanding that at the core, in the center, is the academicians who are researching on poverty. They are engaged in the study of poverty, defining it, etc. And then in the outer circle we have the policy makers, which I just said, from the central government who make policy, including the politicians, to the village level workers. So they are the policy makers, and then we have policy makers are the ones who are making the policy, and the outer circle is practitioners who are working as development workers at different levels, from the center to the state, from top bureaucrats to the middle level and to the village level workers, which include the school teacher in the village and the health worker in the village and extension worker, agriculture extension worker. And the last circle is the society or the general public, which urban people, rural people, people engaged in agriculture and non-agriculture work, people engaged in education or private business, etc., housewives, students, so they are the general public. And in between there is a line running, that is the media. So the ideas from one circle to the other are directly, also there is interaction. There is interaction between academics and policymakers, between policymakers and development workers who are implementing the policy. And then these development workers are part of the society, the larger society. So there are direct interactions, but through the media the ideas may go directly from academics to the public also. So media is the connect, and the public's ideas may feed into the policy as well as to the academic research. So the popular media, the news media, the electronic media, they all play a role. And I have a very interesting paper which was published in Routledge book on poverty and the media or the newspapers. And in that book, it's a collection of how poverty is displayed in news all over the world. And the Indian paper is contributed by me, where I have looked at, and I found, actually to my surprise also, because in my research I looked at what have been the dominant discourses of poverty in India. So I found that in the beginning it was all about the low income. So poverty line approach, low income, it was the poverty understanding. But then by the 70s, the basic needs model came, and the quality of life index and then the human development approach came into being. And when I looked at the newspaper editorials page from the 50s to the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, I found that there was such a, you can say, mirroring of what was going on in the academic research was being reflected in the media through the various documents which were coming in the public domain by the international development agencies. So it was very interesting to see, and that paper I have made quotations as to how the various newspapers stories have been changing from time to time as the research and the policy discourse is changing. So I move on to basically talk about, and I mentioned them, that when I talk about poverty discourse, there are distinct discourses of academicians, which I called academic discourses. Then there is the discourse of the international donor agencies. Then there is the policy discourse, like in India we have the 5-year plans. So the Planning Commission, or we used to have actually, so the Planning Commission used to make plans for the development of the country for 5 years at a time. And there, one of the major objective of planning in India has been removal of poverty, which later was termed as inclusive development. So how different plans look at poverty, how they talk about poverty has also been interestingly changing. And then of course there is people's discourse. So amongst the academic discourse, very briefly if I explain, the dominant discourse is produced by economists, and they have been obsessed with the measurement of poverty, mainly using the poverty line approach. For those who are not engaged in to study of poverty, poverty line is defined as the level of consumption or income below which people are termed as or identified as poor. So we have a certain level of consumption and income, a threshold level. If a person is below it, he is counted as a poor. So the measurement of poverty basically is counting from time to time whether the number of poor and the percentage of poor in the total population, how it is changing. Are we on the right track? Is this percentage changing, reducing actually? Are the total number of people going down, those who are below this poverty line? And there has been, like I said, a major obsession in India. Of course, on the positive side, India is one of the countries which had very robust statistical data available, because the National Statistical Survey Organization, NSSO, has been conducting large sample surveys every 4 to 5 years, and they have been detailed surveys on how much of various items were consumed by the households, from food items, vegetables, to consumption articles, clothing, and so on. So these detailed surveys produce data which is used by the researchers, including the individual researchers, private researchers, to calculate the level of poverty. Now what is interesting is that there has been a huge debate about what is the level of poverty in India. Because what is interesting is, even though the base data is same, NSSO, and the Planning Commission on behalf of the government does a certain calculation of poverty level, and that is reported in the media by the government, the private researchers using the same data may come out with different results. And here methodology used by each researcher is different, and that is why the change, and also the ideologies are different. So it's a very interesting area as to how from the same data, especially post-economic reforms, because in India economic reforms were introduced in 1991, though they started in the 1980s, but major reforms took place from 1991 onwards, making the economy more free globally and internally also, less control of the business sector and more freedom to the industry. So post-economic reforms, those who were in favor of reforms, they tried to show that economic reforms, post-economic reform period has shown reduction in poverty, while those who were against reforms, who wanted more control for the government, they tried to show that because of the reforms, poverty in India has increased. So from the same data, people have come out with figures of poverty being 6% to 60%. The government figure may be somewhere in between at 33% or something. So this interesting debate on measurement of poverty is the topic that I will touch upon in tomorrow's panel discussion. Today I am going to present an overall view of the social construction that I began with. But before I proceed with the social construction, amongst the academic discourses, even though economists have been dominating, there is a sociological view of poverty which says that society always views poverty as a relative deprivation. When we talk about poverty, I said my neighbors have a car and they have a 3-bedroom apartment. I have only a 1-bedroom apartment, or I don't own a car, so I am poor. So as per the academic definitions, if I have enough food to eat, I'm above the poverty line, I'm not poor. But when we talk about poverty in the social sense, we always compare ourselves with our what is known as the peer group or the reference group, our friends, peers, relatives, and we say so and so is poor, so and so is less poor, more poor, or rich. So again, it's very interesting, and why this concept is important is, even though absolute poverty is all right, you may say that, okay, if a country is a developing country, first of all, people should have enough to eat, and that should be the priority. However, again, my own fieldwork in the villages showed that for people, sometimes there may be social things which may be more important than even food. The women I met in Haryana would rather go without one meal than to go without bangles on their hands. So, because if you can't afford to have bangles, then socially you are really, really poor or destitute. So, for them it may be very important as their own sense of being respectable. Adam Smith actually wrote about that in a society where everyone is wearing shoes, going without shoes may be saying that this person is poor. But then in the villages of India, I find that even people who may have bank balances and who have land may not be wearing shoes. So it is the society's, environment or background in which we have to see. Poverty is situated in a particular society. You cannot take away the social aspect and then say that this is what the definition of poverty is. Of course, then there are political scientists who, when talking about poverty, give importance, especially when we talk about the causes of poverty and solutions to poverty. They say people who do not have the power, who are voiceless, powerless, are the people who are vulnerable and poor. And you need to have a certain power to influence policies in your favor, and here the quality of governance also is important. So political scientists' view of especially causes and solutions may be very different from an economist's prescription. Economists would say that provide jobs, or people are poor because they don't have enough gainful employment. But why they don't have gainful employment, why they are poor, has a lot to do with the power structures also. Again, in India, two important factors which affect people's economic freedom and well-being is gender and caste. So invariably the data also shows that people who belong in India, we have more than 80% people belonging to the Hindu religion, and in Hinduism we have this caste system where people are divided into upper and lower castes. So people who are amongst the very, very low castes are known as the scheduled castes, and then we have the scheduled tribes people also. So in the past, scheduled caste people were treated as untouchables. Post-independence, the term untouchable is illegal. You cannot say that such and such person is an untouchable. So they are now termed as Dalits, or officially their caste is mentioned in a schedule of the constitution, and therefore they are known as scheduled castes or SCs. And there are reservations in jobs and educational institutions for these people, so that they have been marginalized for thousands of years, and so they should come up. However, the data on poverty shows that amongst the poor, it is mostly the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. The percentage of poverty is much more amongst the lower castes. And similarly, poverty is much more amongst women and children than amongst men. Poverty is much more in rural areas and in backward regions than in urban areas and well-connected cities. So all these are facts, and therefore the question of power, the center and the periphery, so to say. Lastly, there have been scholars who said that we need to ask this question: whose point of view we are talking about. As academic researchers, as policy makers, we are talking about the poor and what they need. But let's go and ask them, what do they want? What do they see as the problem? So, scholars like Robert Chambers has been writing about putting the last first. So, ask the person who is the lowest as to what his view of the society and poverty and the causes and solutions is. Because unless we ask them and we understand their viewpoint, I don't think the prescriptions we make will be very efficient or effective. So, going further beyond the academic debates, this measurement of poverty I talked about, there are methodological debates, there are ideological debates, there is a debate about the measurement and whether the data is reliable and comparable. These things I'll talk about in my panel presentation tomorrow, so I move on. So I'll just read out. Much of the academic literature on poverty deals with the causes of and solutions to the problem of poverty. Again, all this is a social construct. We talk about poverty as a problem, but we need to question that also. Because there are societies, there are religions in which it is a boon to be poor. You know, you can be closer to God if you are poor. So they can be different ideas, but this is the discourse which has been going around, that poverty is a problem, we need to solve it. These discourses show that the causal analysis is affected by academic disciplines and ideology. So as I already mentioned, that political scientists will say people are poor because they don't have the power to change the policy in their favor. Social scientists will say people are poor because of their caste or because of their gender. And economic scientists or economists will say that people are poor because they don't have jobs or the society is underdeveloped. So it is academic disciplines, it is ideology, and also when we look at different studies, if the study is a state level study or a village level studies based on empirical data, we find different factors playing the role. Like the state level studies bring out the importance of the governance factor. The same scheme of the government of India is running very well and helping the poor in some of the southern states like Tamil Nadu or Kerala, but the same states do not work so well in Bihar or Jharkhand. So we get to see those depending on what is the level of study also. There is actually again a paper that I've written about academic discourses on causes and solutions, so I will provide the reference if you want to go through. This is a very interesting cartoon, we call them. In the most read English daily called Times of India, this cartoonist called Lakshman used to come out with a cartoon every day. So every day's paper had a cartoon, and many times he will write about poverty. So it's an interesting project that I have undertaken. I have not published it yet. How poverty is displayed in the cartoons changing with times. For many years he was making this cartoon. He is no more now. I have not been able to get, I don't know who to ask, the clearance to use, this is a copyright thing, his cartoons, and they have been published as books. So there are 5-6 volumes of cartoons by Lakshman on different themes, and I have collected all the ones on poverty. But this one is one of the cartoons. It says free housing, free medicine, free education for those who are under the poverty line. But we don't have any hope unless we are below the poverty line. So you can see the condition of the house. It seems to be a very dilapidated small house with few utensils, and the person is wearing tattered clothes. So obviously he is looking poor, but this is a satire on the official definition of poverty, that officially you have a certain level. If your income is below that, then you are not poor officially. So there is this term called below poverty line. In short, we call them BPL. So if you are not BPL, you cannot have benefits under various schemes. So for your child to get free education at private schools, of course there are government schools which provide free education, but most people want to send their children to private schools, and in the last 10 years or so, it has been made compulsory that private schools should give 25% seats to the poor people. And the education in the private schools is normally expensive, but the poor people, if they are below poverty line, need not pay any fees. Similarly, there are various other schemes like free rations and so on. But for that, you have to be below poverty line. And when this is very interesting, because when the politician gives a speech, he says, okay, when I come to power, I will help the poor. So many of these people think they will help us. But when actually the policies come, they may realize that they are not poor according to the official definition. So they will not get the benefit. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to look at social construction. And what I found in the village is actually very, very interesting, that it is not only the definition of BPL, but the task of identifying the poor and making the list of the BPL and the beneficiaries is with the village council head. So every village has a village council known as Panchayat, and the head of the Panchayat is called Sarpanch, or the head of the village council. He is the one who sits down with the government functionary who comes, and they make a list of who all are poor. So many people who may be poor may not find their name in the list, and many people who may be actually rich may get their name inserted in the list and get the benefit, especially if the benefit is like a bank loan, which is at low interest rate or has a subsidy, that you take a loan, you don't have to return all of it without interest, and you return only part of it. So then they try to be in the list. And then the government came up with a new definition or new way to identify the poor. So they said, if you have house, which is the definition of pakka house, which means it has plastered walls, etc. It's not a mud house. And if you own any of the following things, which included a television or a scooter or something, then you can't be poor. And people, and this is about the corruption. There was a person who was politically connected who wanted to be in the BPL list in this village, and he said, we have two houses. One is for our, animals, etc. So that is unplastered and it doesn't have electricity. So when the survey people come, we say we live there. But otherwise we live in a pakka house which has electricity and television. So these are the things you get to know when you go for the field work. And that is why I always feel that sociological methods, where you go and talk to people and see things for yourself, observe, give you much better picture of the reality than the economists who make the survey questionnaire and give it to somebody to get it filled. Because in one of the projects, when I used this survey technique for Punjab villages, later when I was analyzing, I found that the data was not like, there was some anomaly. And I asked the person that, how did you collect? He said, oh, was I supposed to actually go and fill it? I just sat and ticked. Then I had to take the field work and go and meet the villagers. So economists' data, I'm very skeptical because it is collected by somebody else. You have certain questions. When the person is putting those questions, even if he actually goes, the person who's answering may not understand because when you ask a person in a village, what is your income? Now they don't understand income. They would probably give you how much they are earning by selling their produce. But then part of the things that they are growing, the cereals and the vegetables, they are consuming, self-consumption. That is also income, but they may not include that. Right? And similarly, each term that you use, it is understood differently by people. So going forward, I talk about discourse and the practice. Of course, I said that there is the discourse of the academicians, there is discourse of the donor agencies like World Bank. There is also this oral discourse of the people. So, if I have to give answer in one sentence about what I found is that academic, official and popular discourse interact with the practice of poverty alleviation to constitute poverty as a social construct. So this is the main idea that I am trying to promote, that it is the three discourses, academic, official and people's discourse, and its interaction with the practice, how poverty's alleviation programs are implemented. Together they construct what we understand by poverty. I will try and not continue for more than 10 minutes so that we have some time for interaction if you have any questions. So I will quickly go over the remaining slides and then see if I have time to talk about some interesting facts. So a part of my findings I call perceptions of poverty, and these perceptions I divided into two. One is the perceptions of those who are engaged in poverty alleviation, the development community. They were found to be influenced by the academic discourse and the official discourse. So these people, especially the top bureaucrats, they go for trainings abroad. The training may be provided by one of the UN agency or one of the multilateral donor agencies. So they pick up whatever is the latest jargon. So at the time when I started my research, ideas of empowerment, participatory development, voice, agency, these were floating. And so these people were using those terms. Participatory approaches, they will say, we believe in empowerment of the poor, etc., etc. So these discourses, I'm saying, find their place in the understanding of the top bureaucracy. But the middle level, when I go to the state level or the district level, they are still not familiar with these terms, and they may talk more in the language of the projects that we have target. We have to help 10,000 people or 20,000 people. We have to give these loans, etc. Besides this, like I said, the position in the professional hierarchy. So the understanding was very different amongst people who were in the center or the state, and at the village level, people who were implementing, they were so close to the poor, they knew them personally. So their understanding of what is poverty was very different. They talked about this corruption, that poor people are, because what they meant was people whose names are in the list are sometimes cheating the government by taking advantage of the schemes. So they will talk about poverty very differently from people who are making policy. Also people's own educational background, family background, what kind of work, whether they are in the field meeting people or they are just studying and making policies, as well as their gender. Because women by and large I found to be more in tune with the people who were working for them. So their understanding of poverty was again more based on their experience, while men may not be so much in touch with the reality. So they had more empathy for the poor, the women I found. So along with these educational background, gender, family background, the structure of bureaucracy within which implementation takes place determines the way the state works. So when we say the government is like that or the government is like that, what we mean is our interaction with the state functionaries, and that depends on all these things I found. The second part of the perceptions is perceptions of general public, those who are not actually dealing with the study of poverty or the implementation of poverty alleviation. They were actually influenced by one, whether they are living in the urban areas or the rural areas, and also whether they are rich or they are poor. They also got affected by the discourses and the media that they are consuming images from, and also their interaction with the state functionaries. So the popular discourse is based on all these factors. Again, I can go on and on about how people explained what their understanding of poverty was according to their own standing in the society, but I will move on. The last two slides about my findings. Observation of government's initiatives to alleviate poverty and also government's program of providing education and health facilities brought out that the agency of the state actor is very, very important. So if the village level worker thinks that poor people are to be empathized with, they need help, then the program will be implemented in a very different way than if the village level functionary thinks that these are the crooks, they want to loot the government. So then he will implement the policy very differently. So it is the village level person, what his understanding of poverty is, that decides how the program will be implemented. I hope I am clear. Also the agency of the community, people who are being helped, people who are in the village, their understanding, and they actually, the poor are not passive actors. They access the state in various ways, and in this process the lower echelons of government bureaucracy and the official poor, that is people whose names are in the poverty line, they appropriate and transform the meaning of poverty. So that is again the social construction part. How poverty is understood, the meaning is based on the agency of the people and the perceptions of the people who are implementing policies. My research revealed that bureaucracy is socially embedded. The village level workers play a decisive role in determining how the initiatives are implemented and who benefits from these. So the Max Weber talked about a rational bureaucracy. He talked about impartial bureaucracy, while in practice what I found was bureaucracy, that is lower level, they are neither impartial, they are nor very, very rational, objective. They work based on their own social embeddedness. So the village level health worker, she was going to the village, and the homes in which she had friends, she will sit with them and have tea. She would distribute the medicines to them more, and she could understand their problems more as compared to the houses which were lower caste houses where she may not like to go. So how a person, what is his standing in the society, social embeddedness is what I call. Also I understood that what we call participatory approaches, empowerment of the poor, these terms are actually turned around when they are practiced. So there is a book called The Tyranny of Participation. So participation, while it's supposed to be very democratic, it can actually be very tyrannical in practice. So lastly, it is the same picture that I showed initially, with the only difference that with the research I found that the interactions between these circles of academic, policy, implementer and society, there are two ways. The interaction is, and the impact is going both ways. Academic research is feeding into policy. Policy is also feeding into academic research. So many of the researchers, including Amartya Sen and more recently Abhijit Sen, who are the Nobel laureates from India, their ideas have been picked up by World Bank, and the World Bank's the definition of poverty and the UNDP's human development approach all came from SAINS capability index, etc. That what is important is capabilities and not just income. So there is a two-way relationship. Similarly, between the lower and the upper bureaucracy, it's a two-way relationship. The people who are making policy are informing the lower bureaucracy that these are the programs you have to implement, but the feedback that they get from the people who are implementing also feeds into improve. Like when they got to know that people who are not poor are getting their names inserted, then they said, okay, let's go by the condition of the house and so on. Similarly, the public itself is interacting with the lower level bureaucracy and their ideas are exchanging, and media in between is playing a role. So I guess that's about all. It's a picture which I liked, so I put it. To change everything, it takes everyone. I open the floor now for any feedback on my presentation and also any questions that you may have.
Is there anything that we can call absolute poverty? I mean, after your talk, I have some doubts about it, but I thought it was there.
Of course, absolute poverty is the concept that we use mostly in measurement of poverty. This whole idea of poverty line approach, which is the dominant idea, is an absolute poverty approach, that this is the level, and in India we define the absolute poverty at the level of consumption at which people have a certain calories. So in 1971, if I'm not mistaken, the first study by Dandekar and Rath said that if you have, at that time I think it was some 20 rupees, 17 in rural areas and little more in urban areas, at which if you have income, per capita income of that, then you are consuming 2200 calories per day, which is the minimum required for subsistence. So why this idea became very popular is that the price of the goods will keep on changing, but you are anchoring it into calorie norm. So each year or each time when you measure, it is that you should be able to consume that many calories. Now, so that is the absolute poverty, that you have enough food to eat, so to say. And majority of the studies are based on that. But what I am arguing is that in society actually it doesn't function like that. People may go without food, then go without bangles. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. I would like just to know what you think about the academic work of scholars as Esther Duflo and Banerjee, who are dealing with poverty issues in a very different way than before. So you were talking about economists. We are mainstream economics, dealing with more quantitative work, but many economists also work with qualitative work, and from a criticized point of view. For instance, institutional economics are dealing with poverty, but criticizing all what you said. I'm an economist at the beginning, that's why I say that. And I'm wondering, how we can deal with this new approach, focusing not on measuring poverty, but on measuring efficiency of policies, focusing on poverty alleviation. And I think that what we should criticize is this kind of way of thinking about poverty, always in terms of efficiency, instead of just quantitative data and all this. Because I think that today this work, randomized approaches, methodology, is much more a problem for me than, working on data and all this. Because it's very powerful, it gets a lot of money from the World Bank, from all international donors. It's because they get also the Nobel Prize in economics. So what do you think about these kind of approaches, and how can we criticize them?
Thank you very much. So you're mentioning Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee's work, which is very, very influential and has been very powerful. Their main contribution is that when you want to make an intervention, you want to make some change, they believe in this randomized sample approach. So why don't you try it and see how it's working? So you have two groups. One is, what is known as the group in which you're making the intervention. The other is where you're not. And then you compare them over time, how it is changing. So things like, we have various programs where benefits are given to the poor. So instead of giving them, let's say, free education, if you give them a certain amount of money per child and they are free to choose the school, they can send their child to school, so to say, or a direct cash transfers as they are called now. So is it better to give direct cash transfer or to give things like free food or medicine or the education? So there, you can get very good results, very robust results as to yes, it is working, no, it's not working, and what are the conditions under which it will work, maybe. So their contribution is, I'm saying, very useful. But as you can see, my focus is on understanding how people understand poverty and how the policies are made, implemented, and how they convert the ideas of poverty. Yes, again, I agree with you that instead of measuring poverty in money terms, we should measure in multiple dimensions of deprivations. And that is the methodology, what is known as the Multiple Deprivation Index, or MDI, which is used by the Planning Commission, which is now known as Niti Aayog in India. So Niti Aayog came with the latest data on poverty, following the UN, this approach or methodology of multiple deprivation, and the ambassador, the keynote address by Dr. M. Sivaguru, political counselor in Embassy of India in Bangkok, he mentioned it that the latest data on poverty in India is based on MDP, and it is showing that poverty has come down from 29% to 14% by 15 percentage points. That is based on the multiple deprivation.
Thank you. I really like your presentation and the idea that you're trying to promote social construction of poverty, which is very interesting and very critical. I also agree with this idea. My question is that when we apply this idea in order to formulate a policy to eradicate poverty, so how the policy going to be like? That's my number one question. The second one, I would like to share my perspective of exclusion and inclusion errors. In Thailand also I have been working on poverty eradication project because precisely poverty alleviation project. So we found a lot of things so similar to what you found in India. Someone determine who's poor, who's not poor, and submit this report to the government in order to gain support or assistance from the government policy and projects. So we have this in Thailand too. So in order to make the socially constructed of poverty viable or in the concrete way, so how are we going to deal with this exclusion and inclusion error of poverty? The numbers of the poor people solve political issues. It's about political issues. If you need to have a lot more number of people, it means you would get more benefits from the government. You need more budget and more resources from the government. And if you said, okay, my village is quite rich, no one poor, so won't get any support from the government. It's a kind of political issue as well, allow the poverty reduction projects. Thank you.
Maybe I missed part of what you said, so I'll try to answer what I understood. Let me know if anything is left out. So the first part, you were saying, how will policy benefit from this approach of social construction? What I can see is that the idea that whatever policy you make ultimately will be implemented by the village level worker. So if that person, how he is understanding the policy is very important. So the policy maker should understand that. I remember this scheme of self-help groups had just come in when I was visiting these villages. And the village level worker came and said, you make a group of 20 women and you deposit money for 6 months in the bank and you show that you are credit worthy, you are able to make savings, and as against that you will get a loan of about 100,000 rupees, and you can, actually the scheme was for starting a enterprise, small enterprise, by taking this loan. But the worker was telling them you can get this money and it has 20,000 rupees subsidy, you don't need to return, and so you will benefit like that. She was not even mentioning that you have to run a business. So in her mind it was like enticing the people to join this so that they will get money out of it. Not mentioning that it is actually supposed to be. And that is what I'm saying, if the policymakers understand, and also they should listen to the people who are implementing, because they are the people who will are at the grassroots. They can tell you why certain policies are working, why certain policies are not working in their area. So particularly, I talked to the school teachers, and there have been also I read reports. In India, in some villages which are very small, it's a one teacher school. So it's one person, because there are very few children, who's teaching from class 1 to class 5. And along with that 5 classes, maybe few students in each, that person is supposed to work on government projects like making the electoral roll. And when the elections take place, he has to do a duty there also. So what are the problems people who may be genuine, not corrupt, working at the village level, what problems they are facing? You need to listen to that and form policies accordingly. If you just make policies sitting in Delhi, not knowing these conditions in which these people are working, then they will never be successful. So I don't know about the inclusion and exclusion errors. There is a lot of literature. I don't know what the solution to this is. Part of it may be genuine inclusion, exclusion error. Part of it may be because of corruption. Like I said, people want to be included. So I don't know. You can try to eliminate them, but you will never be able to eliminate fully. So one way which works is self-selection. So instead of money or loans, if you give work, we have this scheme of minimum guarantee of 100 days of work. It's known as MNREGA, Rural Employment Guarantee Program. So people who work for a day get minimum wages, and it is guaranteed that from one family at least one person will get 100 days work in a year, which is the minimum. So naturally people who are not poor will not come and work for 8 hours to get that minimum wage. But if you give loans, rich people also may want their name to be in the BPL. So that's how you can probably.
Do you have any other questions or comments from the floor? No more? Okay, so is this the right time? So may I have a big round of applause once again for Associate Professor Dr. Amita Motwani from the University of Delhi, India. Thank you very much for your insightful talk. So for now,
thank you very much.
Thank you. So for now, we're going to have a coffee break for about 15 minutes. Please come back before 11 o'clock for the next keynote speech to be delivered by Professor Dr. Surichai Wankao. Enjoy your coffee break. Thank you. Okay, it looks like everyone is ready. So may I start the next session, which is the keynote speech to be delivered from by Emeritus Professor Surichai Wankao on the topic Marginalization and SDGs, Challenges for Cross-Regional Collaborations in a Post-Western World. So before the presentation, may I give you a brief introduction about Professor Surichai Wankao. Professor Surichai Wankao has been the director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at Chulalongkorn University since 2010 and a professor of sociology at the university since 2009. Professor Wankao is also currently an advisor for the Working Group on Legal, Economic and Social Measures for Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, Thailand. A commissioner on the National Health Commission since 2014, the chair of Thailand's UNESCO Most or Management of Social Transformations Program Committee,
and the Vice President for the Intergovernmental Council of Most for Asia and the Pacific region. He is also the chairperson of the Labor Rights Promotion Network Foundation, the Ecological Alert and Recovery Thailand Foundation, and focus on the Global South, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Emeritus Professor Surichai Wankeo on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our honorable MC. It is my great honor to be with all of you in this very interesting gathering. Interesting because we are now entering in a very, many people use the word of different words, but uncertain, disrupted, polycrisis. But the world is in those moments where we are here together, and I was honored to be a part of last night dinner, so I try to adapt a little on my PowerPoint so that we can engage in our discussion. The main topic given by the organizer is the marginalization and SDGs. I am very much aware that SDG has become a kind of language, a common language globally. But in certain ways, SDG has become also some kind of ranking business. That's where it became very problematic. The real spirit of SDG, when it was conceptualized and negotiated, it relates to how to create a global consensus in the world where climate and also inequalities were recognized. Certainly in global capitalism, certainly in unequal worlds, but those words were not used. But the core is, for me personally, if you allow me, the core for SDG is no one left behind. But how the left behind people are treated in different political contexts, in different regional contexts, in different UN sectoral bodies, those depends a lot on our academic discourse, but not the academic discourse alone, but academic discourse engaging with policymakers. So in the light of those challenges, I imagine the timing that we meet here is a good opportunity to talk about how we go into challenge of SDG beyond the usual SDG as a visibility game, as a ranking business. Certainly universities have been using SDG as ranking, countries also. But my point here, I would like really to highlight the challenges after COVID-19 is even more difficult for the whole world. So I will now proceed into my presentation. This is my outline of the presentation to all of you. I am trying to be conversational. I try to interact with our colleagues from different generations in this room and also different contexts in this room, because what we experience as globally as a common experience is anthropos, pos of human activities. not by plan, not by anyone's plan, but by the compelling conditions of COVID-19. So under that, we also have been learning a lot about more disasters, climate-related disasters and issues of that kind. So but again, I would like to put forward to you how I would like to proceed. We were familiar with the word globalization before. We were learning in the past there were more than one globalization. There are more globalizations in different contexts of political and social units. But under COVID-19, we all were forced to experience deglobalization. That's another word that I explained earlier about anthropos. Deglobalization made us feel that when we were able to stop certain activities, several ecological conditions became more healthier than before, including a country like Thailand. Coastal regions were tourist spots and well-known resources for us to get in our economic development. But mass tourism stopped. So many rare animals came back, including dugongs, including many other fishes in the Mekong. But now after COVID, we are re-globalizing again. So the moment we are here is how can we proceed with re-globalization more consistent with what we have learned. But I'm afraid many try to forget COVID experience, but want to get more money out of this immediate recovery policy, including certain policy circles in my country. So with this, the core experience about health and development should become a core of our not only local reflection, but I feel it should also be a part of our broader cross-regional exchange. I would like to highlight the problematic but very powerful geopolitical conditions which we have entered after Ukraine war, after even worse Gaza conditions. And I have to say that we in Thailand are facing also with neighboring conditions from our neighbor, what is happening in Myanmar. I highlight these three as one of three most important in my sense, how we need to go beyond the usual geopolitical understanding to our challenging agenda of knowledge and action. Thereby, the issue that I would like to highlight in this talk is related to how can we talk about eco-peace, peace in the context of ecological crisis, peace in the context of ecological restoration, not just peace. In many cases, in certain period of Thailand, we have experienced with what is called negative peace. Peace by people in power and weapons. The military seized power. So those are peace, but negative peace. It has not been very enabling for our positive exchange for future agenda. So this, after reflecting on post-COVID, I think is a good time really to look at how we share the learning and how we share the rebalancing with the LB, meaning the left behind. Because the left behind in many cases are not the left behind, they are the pushed behind. In political science, in sociology of power, I think it is clear that we are faced with serious challenges on the level of civic space engaging into the future. In that sense, we are now trying to look globally how we understand the democratic recession, not only in one country, but globally. Not only in developing states, but also in even the so-called developed states. This I include the USA, etc. So globally, we are facing with a challenging context of democratic backsliding, so to speak, which is now a very lively frontier of research. We are also learning about how to term the context in another way as competing authoritarianism. So with this context, but still we are learning, we need to learn how the people in the marginalized context, people who are the left behind, or people who are supposed to be agency in the language of our previous speaker, people with agency can become a part of a force for the future. So my last key points relates to the agenda that maybe we can share together. Think about the future, how can we talk, and I put this in the light of reflecting on our methodology of co-creating knowledge into the future. I try to understand and put our context after COVID-19 that the world has been even, with 2015 global agenda, the global consensus were there. But with the geopolitical conflicts, including what people call New Cold War, that also includes the bigger power, Western and also Eastern, like the US and China, have become a part of this worrying sign of deteriorating context of consensus for our global obligation to the planet. We were able to now reflect on what is called Asia, but in different ways we are more familiar, in Thailand, more familiar with the land, the continental Thailand. In my talk today, I would like to also to bring to you the maritime Thailand. Thailand, which also sharing two oceans, one with India, that is called Indian Ocean, the other, the Pacific, the Gulf of Thailand. So with that context, we see Thailand as a part of this reflection and how all this geographical reference become problematic even these days when people talk about garbage in the ocean, and no one seems to really be able to deal with the garbage which are in the ocean to the scale as we are experiencing. So land, ocean, or the earth. All these previous, up until lately, became a part of how we can manage to make profit. I say this in the light of several of us are here because Indian Study Center is the organizer, and I came because we can reflect back longer how the earth could be conceptualized beyond how to make profit out of the earth. That means the non-secular, the non-material understanding, but what is called religious meaning of land, ocean, rivers, all this need to be reconsidered. So this in the light of the struggle between management, the language. We have Faculty of Management Sciences, but we do rarely take the issue of meaning deep enough and long enough for our present context of crisis. Oops. I am sure you are familiar with this. This figure came in the past reflection on the SDG 17 goals, grouped in the context where we often talk about economy and society. For when we talk about society, that relates to also politics, political science, law, governance, etc. Rural, urban, but all this could not function at all if they are not situated in the biosphere, in the planet Earth, which is a lively system of living creatures. We can understand this better if we can imagine, recall certain words when we pray at the end of our ceremony. In Buddhism, for example, we would use the word sapphe satta, meaning all living creatures, all suffers, and all. The best thing in the teaching is not to harm, do no harm. But we have forgotten in our real life, and our development path has become problematic in the context of our reflection. I just highlight this reflection from a UN ESCAP paper, which put all the 17 goals in the context where how we have been doing, how we can evaluate our success and failure. Partly it became a kind of ranking, but more importantly, this kind of reports help very much how we are far behind our targeted goals. With this, the crisis of insufficient progress has become a crisis of how we make our systems, our government, our academic engagement more functioning as to how we can progress into the promised goals. Here, if you can take a look in the details, there are certain reverse that need to really be looked into. And all this red and also the longer and serious ones need to be seen. Now you see in this in the light of the evaluative report on the SDG implementation. They are doing it annually, but biannually they make a bigger report. So you can check it in the UNSCAP report. Recently they're having a meeting, just finished 1 or 2 weeks ago. The recognition of the problems why we were not able to accommodate the efforts in a meaningful way, and many relates to the problems of institutions, meaning in some other language, problem of power structures. And that relates to adverse norms and discriminatory practices of institutions. And in Thailand, as a part of this reflection in this survey, also reflect in this bigger picture of the region. Here you see what we have been learning is the fundamental question is we have lost biodiversity resources to the level that it has become so problematic for our human well-being who are living in the planet, and especially in our region. This has become even more important. In the light of this reflection, we are experiencing biodiversity collapse. We are experiencing climate extremes. We are experiencing disasters even more frequently than we used to. I say this in the light of many who are living in this region, but I do not know how in Europe or in Turkey or in Moldova you may experience better, but our region do have serious challenges. So the ecosystem destruction in the context of the development efforts so far, even with the promise of working hard on the SDG, have not really bear the necessary promise. Not enough. Better, but not enough, and many are in very threatening situation in our context. In UNSCAP, they are trying quite hard to make the regional level discussion on these issues meaningful, because the issue of SDG has been so much discussed as a national reference, but not so much as a regional platform of reflecting how we can be more responsible to the context of our problems. I also would like to highlight, just to support the kind of problems that we are facing in this. I can go fast, but you can Google for yourself. Every day before the Davos meeting, the World Economic Forum, you would be able to read a report on global risk report, which is an academic survey, in-depth survey of views of key people in policy making circles, from important business and international companies, civil society organizations, as well as leaders. So all these opinions are reflected in this report. And now we are learning that the different experiences of problems have become more interconnected. Problems or crises become interconnected. So the interconnectedness of the problems become more serious, more intense, and that need knowledge efforts to disentangle. That needs disciplinary, or not only disciplinary, multidisciplinary work to clear up the issues together. I cannot, I am sorry, I cannot move my slide. I do not know why. But can someone help me? Okay. Good. Thank you. So in this report, you can also see what have been major 5 top risk. The sense of risk have been highlighted into specific themes. I would like only to mention to you to see the colors. The green, before we got into COVID, okay, you could see it very clearly. But once we got into COVID, you see some more perceptions on risks, and in the red and the orange and the violet. If you look into this red, the greens are the ecological, the climate, the disasters, biodiversity. In short, biodiversity related, many issues related to what I mentioned earlier, biodiversity collapse. But once we got into COVID, we learned other problems, even more, perceptions about polarization become very high. Perception about social erosion, meaning the relationships among social groups in societies and among countries become declining so fast. And those also relate to a background of what we experienced along the way, the geopolitical conflicts that we are experiencing. So now with the digital world we also experience a lot of challenges. How do we deal with cyber security? How these issues should be understood. With this background, I would like to highlight into the next challenge, the next issues that I would like to share with you. This year is 2024. I show you this slide because it is just 20 years ago we had this experience. And this experience is called something we never experienced in the national level, but we learn about what is called tsunami. And in this tsunami became a national experience, but it also became a site of international learning and global learning for Thailand. I will show you how this kind of disaster have opened up in the last 20 years. Critical issues on the left behind people, or the invisible people in Thailand in the light of this. The victims of tsunami, we could see they were, we had many tourists from Sweden, from Scandinavia. So we also learned that in the tsunami there are many bodies of people who could not be identified. So the unidentifiable and the non-identifiable people are almost equal. Altogether, more than 5,000. And with this, I will show you that our context of multi-religion Thailand, although we have many Buddhists, a majority are Buddhist, but also we do have Muslim. And in this briefing period, we were able to learn more about who are among the disappeared and the one who need more attention. I just go quickly by showing you that, for example, we are learning about the sea nomads in Thailand. We only talk about migrant workers, but we have not really learned that in our country there are people who are nomadic, and they are nomadic in the sea. And they live between Thailand, Myanmar, Indonesia, and many of them do not have state papers, documents. But these people historically were important when we had negotiation with the British in the 19th century for how to demarcate Siam. But these people have not been visible in Thai policy making until the tsunami, because many people learned that these people, they lost, no one died in the tsunami. No one died in tsunami. All the other people died. The sea nomads, when they see the waves retreating from the coast, the sea nomads went to the mountain. But the other people go to see the coast where the sea retreated. And then when the ocean came back, it's too late. So they were overwhelmed by the water. So we learned that the ecological knowledge of these people through the sharing, to the methodology, geological learning, or whatever, became a part of how we can understand the kind of how they cope with disasters of the kind. These are the numbers of the sea nomads that we discover. And I borrow this from Ajahn Narimon, my colleague from Social Research Institute. She works on these people, and even the sea nomads, there are big three groups. And this I just want to mention in the light of the present context, where they used to have a what you call cemetery for the ancestors at the very important location near the coast. But now those areas after the tsunami in 2004, those areas become very much valued commercially. In this photo, you can read the comics. I just follow the style of Professor Mudani. It tells about the people who dress well in suit talking to the sea nomad about. In fact, it tells that the land is already having a title granted to the company who is going to build a hotel. And the hotel is to be owned by one of the biggest, one of the richest person in the Thai banking system. I don't have to mention the last name, but you can check it. But you see, these land conflicts become even more challenged in the light of how to recover after tsunami. That was some 15 years ago. But even now, until now, not yet settled. I conclude after telling you this that we have been learning after tsunami that the people on the ground who are being displaced in the tsunami became also visible and became a part of our public learning. And through that, we also learn that there are many people who work with this in the context of poor rights network. At the moment, this group turned to be what is called P-move in the present context of policy making from below struggle. The other case I want to mention to you is from Songkhla, another province in the south, where there is a industrial estate zone to be built. Before COVID, it was very active as a government policy. But during, there was certain reflection on how to do it better with the industrial estate. You could also imagine that the southern three provinces of Thailand, including a part of Songkhla, the three southern parts of Thailand, three provinces of Thailand, are heavily populated by Muslim population, 80 to 95% Muslim. So the government in Bangkok were hoping, they were hoping to do this industrial estate, industrial complex through model industrial zone. But if we take a look, previously the land was supposed to be accommodated of the bioeconomic resources. I mean tourist spots. If some of you who know, who have been in the south, you would know that this area in the south have been very important for the coastal resources, the mangrove forest, the issue of coastal area conservation. But in the light of a governmental initiative, they were trying to change the color of the green into the violet, meaning to make it industrial. To make industrial is not only an issue, but to make it industrial in the name of advanced industrial zone, advanced industrial zone model. So that meaning that all the villages, all the fishing villages, all the small fishers need to be evacuated from this area. So one day in 2019, 2020, 50 villages, mostly women, came to Bangkok under the state of emergency. I highlight this because under COVID, we had a very strict rule. But the women came to request the government to reconsider the changing of the area into the industrial zone model, to reconsider, not to protest against it alone, but to reconsider in the light of a strategic environmental assessment, what is called SEA. You can also Google that this call was very important in the light of, in the broader context, Thailand at that time were propagating, after the coup d'etat under General Prayut, there was also a strong push under the commitment to the SDG, to the global agenda 2020, that Thailand is pushing forward to what is called BCG transformation. This BCG transformation is very consistent with the global agenda, biodiversity. Please take note, the BCG, B is bioeconomy, C is circular economy, G is green economy. All the keywords, bio, circular, and green are there. This has been a governmental flag, policy flag under General Prayut, the last government. But despite this proclamation of policy, but the plan for Channa Industrial Estate is very inconsistent with this BCG idea. Very inconsistent, contrast in fact. So the villagers, they asked the cabinet to reconsider it, and in 2021 December they came. They were protesting, but as I said earlier, with that protest, 37 people were arrested in the midnight. The women, and with this protest, they became a part of a very high level discussion in the policy negotiation, that how people who violated the state of emergency could be considered in the light of the governmental policy violation of their own words. So along that line, the policy decisions of the cabinet became a part of the negotiated document, that this group, in the next way, they were all released. All the 37 were released, and among them there was one man, only one, and among them there is also interesting young university student, a lady by the name of Khairiya. I mention this name because she has been quite important in the light of the young people's awareness of the crisis they are facing at the coastal area in the south. After they were released, they made prayers in their own provinces, and they were later, the court later, that all the charges against them were not functioning anymore. So they celebrated. So I mention this in the light of our reflection here, that Mekong and Ganga, why do we need to talk about Mekong Ganga in the context of the present challenges that I just show you? How can we relate all this? Personally, I would like to bring this thing in the context of our problems that we are facing, in the light of knowledge, in the light of, we are mostly from university and knowledge professions. May I say that if we take a system view of the extreme events that we are facing now, the orange color, the pink color, the red color are our anthroposphere, and the sphere that human beings are familiar. The sphere of knowledge, including social sciences, economic, political science, law are part. But we are also experiencing the relationship between the anthroposphere and the biosphere. You could recall what I showed you earlier about the circles, maps of the SDG earlier. The biosphere, which is very basic in our real existing system. We cannot exist without the biosphere. But those are too far away from our academic discussion. But they are so close when we have crisis, so close when we have climate disasters, like now we are experiencing. But we are also even too far away from atmosphere. So I would like just to mention the other two spheres in the light of how can we rate our social science, our reflection in the work, global knowledge or disciplines that need to be, we have to make friends together. So with that, may I now try to come to a level of the kind of concluding part. The context of where we are living now is that it is a context of imbalances. Both imbalance of many, we are impacted by the global social science, which has been more influenced through the European Enlightenment, which are very important for humankind, but they seem to be demanding a new reflection. We live in a world where there are new global dynamics of how to understand the world, where the West and the East are now going into a new phase of exchange. This is not a kind of anti-Western world alone, but we need to go beyond the pro or the anti-language, the language of polarization, but to a new level of mutual learning in the new context. I also would like to highlight that we are here in this room benefit from certain efforts in Europe. I learned last night about Euro Horizon 2030. I mentioned this in the light of regionalization. I mentioned this in the light of regional integration, because we in Thailand are familiar with ASEAN, Mekong, but we have not really looked into whether we gone deep enough in our regionalization. So my point here is to propose a deeper regionalization, longer engagement in history, and that having discussion here with the Indian Study Center is also a part of our how we can reflect on a longer view. Also, we need to reflect on the so-called national interests have dominated too much in our discussion or exchange. How can we deal with the transboundary interest or the global or the transnational interest that we are experiencing but have not been able to respond well? I would like now to just to highlight that with this, because you could recall I used the word polarization some time ago. In the global context when my previous keynote speaker also spoke about the general public, but I would like to highlight the word global public became more polarized. Even the UN system is under question because how to deal with the war in Ukraine. The global public became easily polarized. And I highlight this part in the sense that if we don't face with the challenging context of foundational challenge of ecology, we will fail in our knowledge efforts, because geopolitics will not answer our responsibility. But we have to face the reality of geopolitics, but how to go beyond it in a meaningful way. So that is a challenge of values to engage into the future. For those people who are in SDG, I think this book is really worth a look into. It is a global level research on the political impact of SDGs. It also talks about the limitations and the challenges that SDG has become only strongly national context issues, but SDG in a broader sense have failed as a global and regional engagement. So along that line, my last point relates to how can we in this room collaborate for a fairer world, a more positive contribution to the world, where the global imbalances and the global inequalities, even after COVID-19, it has become even more recognized. The realities of digitalization was not only positive in some way, but it also became a part of driver for inequalities as well. So we live in that kind of world where we need to put our challenges together, and the challenge cannot be responded if we do not come back to the basics of life. Basics of water, basics of life related to food. And friends talk about food security in the morning. And several others are very basic issues in life need to be responded. And health among them are pushed forward to our new recognition of this context of challenge. So the SDG alone, based on the evaluation report and others, it need to be understood, but need to be accommodated by additional reflection beyond the nation-state context to a regional and cross-regional sharing. I would like really to highlight how we, as human beings, individually we are all at least human beings, but how can our scales of feeling and thinking be a part of our new learning? And for that, the co-creation, the issue of governance need to be accommodated to our knowledge work together. I borrow this slide from a reflective paper on SDG practice. The key issue is the governance of SDG beyond the government and beyond the national context alone. But we do need to bring the governance of SDG to our knowledge sharing across the borders. And the core is empowerment and inclusion. But everyone, when I use this word, is aware that in the previous discussion, it is also probably easy to be recognized that there are what is called by Ajahn Kandokwan inclusion-exclusion error. Who decides who is in and who is out? Who is the power? So if we do not reflect on the technical mode of dealing with problem of poverty only technically, but if we deal with the problem of poverty in terms of global relationships and also how human relates to nature, I think we would be not easily able to answer the challenging problems of how we move ahead. I would like to finish by highlighting some hopeful move in the global level, despite the geopolitical war that I mentioned. For example, we previously, a year ago, we had this, 2 years ago, we had this UN climate change conference, and that also very difficult to come to a conclusion. But there was important recognition as a consensus on cost and damage. For example, there were another positive move in the UN called Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework. This called upon the companies, the investors, to be under stronger governance. But promisingly, we had this BBNJ agreement globally, and this one, we had this as a compelling agreement on the global level. Please take note the word beyond national jurisdiction. This is related to human responsibility to the ocean. Human responsibility to the ocean, marine biodiversity responsibility. But no country is really able to deal with it, but the globe come to this level. So with all this, I just would like to end here by highlighting what I thought may be a part of our reflecting together, that we need to reflect on how to bring our exchange deeper and also more relevant to one another in the light of the challenging problems of our time in the uncertain world. And with this, maybe I should like to end here by putting this forward to all of you, and we are here in front of all the reflection at Mahavilai Ubon Ratchathani, where it is situated near the Mekong River. Mekong River as international river demands a lot of regional thinking, but up until now we have so strong national regimes in dealing with Mekong, and we can never deal with it adequately anymore with relying on this. And in the light of this, I beg your help, your support to bring a discussion in our country, in our region, to be more responsible for the worsening Mekong and the regional responsibility to the regional commons, air and also atmosphere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Surichai Wankao. I think maybe, although it's lunchtime, but I think we may have a few questions or comments from the floor, please. Any comments or questions?
Can I ask your opinion about, because you mentioned about eco-peace, but right now at the present time we have a lot of conflict between like a powerful country, you know, like USA or China, something like that. So in your opinion, so how you think about eco-peace can happen in a current situation like this? Thank you so much.
Thank you for a very challenging question. We are locked. We cannot move forward now because we are locked into one thinking that we have only the government speak, and no other units in the society can speak globally. So but in the reality, the reason that many of you are here, not because you represent the government, not because, so I am talking now about the sense of the problematic framework of state-centrism. We recognize the importance of state as a governing system. But we also have other social actors, including universities, including companies. So in the reality of the world, companies become even more active. In Mekong issue, I want to show you this. Okay, in this slide, there is a group in Chiang Rai called Ratchathani. This group, they campaign against building dams in the upper Mekong, which China used to say that it is an internal matter of China. Internal river of China called Lan Chang. But the lower part of Mekong is called Mekong. It is international river. But this group in Chiang Rai, Ratchathani, they campaign in the region, in the Southeast Asian region, Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Vietnam. They collected some 10,000 signatures requesting data, transparency about the upper Mekong. Send the letter out to the public domain. One day, Chinese company called, I cannot think of the name of the company now, but I can recall later. But they came to see this group. They asked for a meeting, and I was able to be a part of such a meeting. So I am now responding to Ajahn Mot in the sense that how can we go beyond the geopolitical units? It is not easy if we limit the representative issue only to the specific type of units, like only the government speak. People who are affected by the Mekong don't have any voice. So they had voice only they make public signature. And then afterwards, the Chinese government sent deputy minister to be a part of a ASEAN meeting and promising to give transparency of data of the upper Mekong to that meeting happened in Hua Hin when Apisit was a prime minister. So I just recall the fact I was interested how communities across the border can make their presence in the public domain transborderly or transnationally. And especially, I would like to highlight the issue of not geopolitical unit, but also ecological unit, like people who live because of Mekong, people who live with the river called the Nista in Bundova, for example. And people who live with the river, like Gangas or Yamuna, Brahmaputra in India and Nepal. And so these people sometimes are not represented in the single voice from the capital. It's not that we are against the government, but I think the global exchange of voices demand for sustainability demands that we go beyond the singular level of policy exchange. So how can our discussion, how can political science go beyond nation state discussion? How can sustainability discussion in this kind of context be a part of a healthier enabling environment of policy making? So along that line, I guess we may be able to learn from one another more. Thank you.
Are there any more comments or questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Surichai.
Ajahn Kanokwan, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
On that side first. Thank you.
Ajahn, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, this year is 2023, right? This year is 2023. So that means SDG is already 7 years in. But data has shown that only 15% of the SDG is successful. So what do you rate? Do you think SDG is still relevant today in today's discussion? Because we are only 15% met of the goals. Yeah.
May I know your name?
I'm Alex.
Alex from where?
Chula.
Okay. Sorry. We are, the SDG for our discussion, I think it is a common language that we can talk about. I try not to see it as a ranking game. So, but in fact, how can we talk about the future? For example, certain countries, including the USA, did not deliver the voluntary national review. Only they did it last year. Last year is the first time. So I'm not joking, but in fact, despite promise that everyone would like to present the self-evaluation, but many people don't do it. So still we are not yet meeting the goal. But we do need certain language to talk about, to use, like have we been able to deal with the climate in a better way? Okay, at least we know the word 1.5, okay, for example, the degrees. So that kind of measurement, SDG try to have certain level of measurement, but it is not totalizing in my view. It is not the most important issue. The real issue is how can we create the global responsibility discussion toward this present difficult crisis together. I think this is quite challenging. I am not pro SDG as pro or against, but I think we do need certain language. Certain language also include human rights. Whether we agree on certain rights or not is okay, but I think we have to come to certain level. You can remember in some country, if you talk about LGBT, you can be sentenced to death even now. If you talk about education for girls in some countries, you could get shot like Malala. So you see, it's difficult. So, but SDG has this education, compulsory education for comparison, for example. So I am for that, Alex. I don't know whether it answers your question or not. Yeah, thank you. I can.
Yes.
I have a quick question for Ajahn or Professor Surichai. I really like the term that you mentioned, the co-creating the future. Co-creating the future. I think this provoked my thoughts. How are we going to do that? Because we are facing so inequality among segments of populations, particularly the invisible groups of people. How we create any platforms, any spaces for them to be part of the co-creations of the knowledge, co-creations of the future. I think it's very, very challenging, Ajahn, from my experience. Even though we have been trying very hard to include these people, particularly for example, the dam-affected people in the Mekong, because you mentioned about the Mekong development and a lot of people trying to stop it, but it's not has been unsuccessful. Ajahn, I would like to hear your perspective on this. Thank you.
Co-creating the futures, yes, it's a nice word, but so difficult to move concretely. That's true. How can we agree to that someone that we have not counted them as a part? Ajahn, my previous speaker, like whose knowledge counts? Whose knowledge counts? Yeah, we are used to the people whom we see, people whom we are familiar, but we don't count people who are, they are like, before we use the word, certain words, and now you use what you call unscheduled in India, for example. But you see, may I answer in short? Unless we recognize that we cannot do it, we have limits to include, as we are familiar, our familiar environment. Unless we recognize with our humility, we cannot do it. But we think we cannot create a future I cannot create future for my students. Father cannot create futures for their children. May I mention that that is still easy. When we talk about the people who are not visible in the room, sometimes we talk about the disabilities. Sometimes we talk about people who, when we talk about disabilities, many of you in this room may also recognize there are very different categories of disabilities, and it becomes very complicated. So I bring this word that we the human limitation to include need to be aware from the start that but the willingness to include is a condition. Now the point of co-creating relates to the power issue. When we I just want to mention from Thailand that we have a very beautiful paper called National Strategy of Thailand 20 Years. ยุทธศาสตร์ชาติ 20 years, beautiful, with 13 parts. Many committees. After the coup d'etat, some nearly 10 years ago, it became a key document for all universities and all public organizations need to plan according to the indicators. Without it, you will not get the funding, budget. But now it has become a part of our reflection. At that time, when they planned national strategy, there was no COVID-19. There is no clear thinking about the digitalization. There is no clear understanding about the geopolitical rivalry that developed afterwards. That includes also the UN system in a certain way being challenged. So how can we go into the future with a ready-made national 20-year plan? It is already a challenge for everyone, but in political legitimacy discussion in Thailand, it needs to be transcended. So when I answer this in the light of trying to answer Ajahn, took that if the future could be created by top-down approach, it is possible. You don't need co-creation. But the future need to be created by the actor themselves. However uneducated they are, but they have to create their future as well. At least they have to feel that they be a part. So I think here the sense of agency in co-creating are so important. I mentioned only human beings now. I have not yet mentioned about the animals and others. But you see, if we agree that we live in the world where we need to really, how we create forest. For example, in Thailand now, a hot issue, create forest without people, but with only certain kinds of animals. I think that kind of thing. So co-creating future, meaning a recognition of the right of the others to be a part in the engaging into that kind of thing. So I think it's very challenging, and it's good to open up discussion, but there is no ready-made way. But I do hope that if we feel we can share, I think we can learn a lot from your countries, your context as well. In Thailand, we have been too long in the top-down mode, and we need a more horizontal, a more diverse exchange across the sectors and borders. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all the questions and comments too. And now it's lunchtime. I think everyone is a bit hungry already. So the buffet lunch will be available downstairs on the first floor. When you go downstairs, turn right. It's on your right. Okay. We'll meet again at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for the panel discussion. So enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
I just want to ask the person who asked the question, what is the source of you saying that 15% only has been achieved? Are you referring to a specific SDG or all the SDGs taken together? And yeah, and what is the source?
For all of it, to answer your question.
You said a UN report. You will have to give a clear one. Which UN report you're talking about?
Yeah. But it was Q&A, so I don't have the data on hand.
Because you are talking about a particular SDG.
No, the entire SDG.
No, then it's not correct.
15%.
50 or 15?
15.
Yeah, that's not correct. Because many of the SDGs, even 85% has been achieved. So some SDGs. It's varying for different SDGs. Some have been achieved even 85%. Some may be below 50%. But overall 15% is incorrect.
We can take this offline, but I can show you the numbers later.
Okay, thank you very much everyone. Enjoy your lunch.